Welcome, everyone. My name is Erica Moy, and I'm a facilitator with All Learners Network. And this afternoon, we will be talking about using models for intervention. So hopefully you are in the right spot with what you thought we would be doing. I have TJ, my colleague at All Learners, here with me to help monitor the chat. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to pop those in there, and one of us will either respond to you or kind of stop, and so we can address the questions that come up. All right, so let's get started because we have a packed hour this afternoon. We are really going to think about what is the difference between strategies and models first. We are going to look at some of the high leverage progressions and really think about how we can use those to explore models as a tool when you're working with students and thinking about planning interventions and how those might be used to solve problems. So we will get some time to do some math this afternoon as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually have you all take a moment to go into a breakout room. And so in this room, you are going to have 2 or 3 people in the room. And really think about your understanding of models versus strategies. And when you come back, be ready if there are any questions that come up of why you put your sort the way you did. So I'm going to, hopefully you followed me to the Jamboard. And so each page, whatever group number you're in, will be the page of the Jamboard that you go to. And so you'll see different images in here, words that you're going to sort and either put them on the strategy side if your group thinks they're a strategy, or move them over to the model side if you think they are a model. So again, whatever group number, whatever room you're in, will be the page that you go to in order to do your sort. Are there any questions? We will put the Jamboard in the chat before you go to your breakout room.
I just got it in there.
Perfect.
So I have 12 breakout rooms, Erica. Should I start them
Awesome.
now?
That would be great.
And how long do you want them to
And
have?
we'll do about 10 minutes.
Okay. Opening rooms now.
So let's start. Are there any questions that feel unresolved from your conversation?
Yes, we didn't resolve an answer.
Which one?
Neither one. We were unsure of which ones were strategy and which ones were served as models only. So we had a lot in the middle.
Did any group have some thoughts that could help sort this out a little bit?
Our group said that a model is the visual manifestation of a strategy in general. So like there was one that had a number line and there were jumps on the number line. Well, the strategy could be that I jump by 10s as far as I can. And that drawing the number line with those jumps on it is the model of that person's thinking. So some of those were, a little of both.
So some of them, yes, some of the images you could definitely, they had a model or some sort of tool and representation, but you could also see their thinking or how they solved it. So if you think about someone who's making a 10 or getting to another benchmark number, you could do that in multiple ways. You could do it by decomposing and adding with equations. You could do it on a number line. You could do it with your 10 frames. So the 10 frames, the number line, the equations are all the models that you're using in order to apply and do that thinking, that action piece of what are you doing in order to solve and do your math thinking. This quote here is thinking about representations are not the same as strategies. but representations support the thinking through strategies. So that is, what are the actions? What are the steps that you're taking? How are you getting to your answer? So in the slide deck, which will be available after the conference, you will see here are some models. So your fingers could be a model, geometric figures, 10 frames, all of those tools or representations and manipulatives that you might have in your classroom. And then the strategies are where you see those tools being used in order to get at that math thinking or to be solving and processing through the work. So that is our bit of a background as we move into thinking more about models. And so really it's important for learners to make connections around those mathematical ideas and different models. And this is something that I talk about a lot, especially when I talk about providing interventions for students, is that some students who see their classmates solve something on a number line and someone else is building it with base 10 pieces, they might not see how those are connected or what's similar about those two things, or even that the same strategy could be applied with different tools. So highlighting those conversations, especially thinking about that closure piece of your math block, is really helpful in supporting students making those connections between representations and strategies and different ideas. So one tool and resource that we have from All Learners are high leverage assessments. So these are developed in order to really assess and look at what are students' understandings around the high leverage concepts, those most essential skills for students to be able to leave a grade level with and access the next year's grade math. So these assessments are a place that you could really get some information on your students and see what their thinking is. What are they understanding? What models are they using? What strategies are they using to approach problems? And then from there, this could be a tool where you do a work sort or even think more deeply about where they might fall along the learning progression. So on the high leverage concept map for each grade level, the top is that most essential learning, and then you'll see models for intervention and models for instruction. So we have the models for instruction as a broader list because in the classroom during that first layer of instruction, that's the grade level math for every student, you will be exposing your students to many, many different models. And then you'll see that the models for intervention are a bit narrower list because through research-based support and also through testing it out in schools with students, these models for intervention have been found to be really effective for students who need that extra support and extra time to be able to develop the conceptual understanding. So that is where you'll see some of these models within the high leverage concept maps. The piece that we're going to really dive into today is to look at these learning progressions. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to just take a few minutes to look at the website and find where these learning progressions are. And so think about, you'll see the high leverage concepts are mapped out and some critical areas and aspects to each concept are laid out on the progressions, and you'll see how they develop over the course of a school year. So thanks, TJ. TJ has put that page into the chat. So I want you to just take a minute, go to the website, find the learning progressions, and you can explore, and then we'll use those to do some math.
Erica, I just think it's important to note here that if you are looking at the pre-K to fourth grade progressions, they won't have yet some of the models drawn in, but they're coming soon.
Yes. Oops. And actually, yes, I'm wondering if actually, TJ, you could pop the slideshow into the chat so that folks can see those, because they do have, I will actually pull them up right now. Here are the initial draft form of the earlier grade level progressions that have those visuals that you see already in the ones on the website for grades 5 and up. So these are a work in progress, but you'll get a little preview tonight to really see some of those images. So these ones are kindergarten, and you'll see the counting collections and the objects that go along with it. And then looking at different tools and models that are being used. And then in first grade, you'll see the subitizing again has moved on from regular images to really more thinking about grouping. And you'll start to see that we are unpacking that understanding of place value, as well as using these different strategies and tools together to solve and do some operations, and really thinking about these critical elements of composing and decomposing and applying and using the properties of addition. So we're going to think about using models for math. So unpacking how we might solve some math problems and how you might use different models to solve those. So this Jamboard, you will not have time this afternoon to solve all of these problems, but there are some tasks in here that have developed from All Learners. Some of them are available if you have an All Learners membership that are different problem solvers. Some of them are main lesson tasks, so you'll get a little preview of what's in the works for the ALO membership. But there are some tasks in here that I want you to think about. What models could you use to solve it? And those slides that are in the slide document, they have different models if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know, this is how I would think about solving it, but to give you some ideas of other ways that you can solve them as well. So don't worry if you don't finish all of the math problems, but I do want you to spend some time doing some math. There are some virtual manipulatives if you feel like you want to do that and take some screenshots to put your work in there, or if you want to write on the sticky notes within the Jamboard. We can look at some of this. Any questions that kind of came up as you were solving these problems? Lots of drawings for the apples. I love it. Ooh, I love that people are in here commenting on what tools and what representations folks are using. Lots of creativity here with these images too. Got some ratio tables and double number lines, tape diagrams that we can use for this mixing of juice. Definitely a fun one, especially if you get some juice. I did a similar problem all about ratios when I was teaching a course for adults, and we got the paint down and folks were mixing and using the actual paint to solve their problem too. So thinking about lots of creative ways. And more tables here. Awesome. So I am going to go back to the PowerPoint, and you'll see in here these documents are not on the website right now. They are undergoing revision. because we are adding more models to them. So you'll see different models than in images for them. And hopefully by the end of maybe April or so, we will have them all up and nice and pretty on the website. And I just want to draw your attention to these slides here that really get at these different strategies and then the different models that can be used in order to use that strategy. So you'll see like the place value decompose both numbers. You can do that with the 10 frames. You can do it on the number path. You can do it with place value manipulatives, or you can do that on the number line. So there are definitely a lot of ways that you can do that. And again, like I was mentioning, how can students see connections between what's the same and what's different, and where they see the parts and the wholes on there. So again, with the fractions, this one is up on the website. So you will see if you're teaching 5th grade or working with 5th grade students or 5th grade concepts, even this first introduction page actually gives anybody who's teaching 4th grade or 3rd grade a really great snapshot of models that they are starting to introduce as they build that foundation. So when you're thinking about providing interventions for a student, you can really use these progressions to go back and say, where is the student's understanding? What are the models that might help move them along and support that understanding? But also, as you look through across the different grade levels, you'll start to notice different models that are building upon one another. So you'll see how a number line can start to be used with whole number reasoning. And then here again, you'll see when you're moving into fractions that they're using the number line. And then even with some of you in your groups, you were using that number line to get at the ratio concepts in more of a middle school problem. So you'll notice and you'll be able to see how students can take that same way they were approaching problems and grow that with different concepts over time, which is one of the pieces of really helping students go back to and build from what they know in order to be able to really have deep conceptual understanding of those concepts. And you'll see a lot of those area models, the same thing. Those area models come up in multiplicative thinking, and then they're also here in fractional reasoning. So really thinking about how are we being intentional with what we're doing as far as tasks, but also how we're being intentional, how we're having these conversations to highlight and make connections around different models that students are using. So I want to take the last couple of minutes and really leave with this big idea here that John Tapper always talks about, is that if there is no model, there's no understanding. That really, in order for us to know that students have a robust understanding, they do need to be able to model and show what they're thinking about. So in the slide deck, if you have these resources for different offerings, as well as how to connect to All Learners Network on the website, or to reach out if you have any questions. But I did want to open it up for the last couple of minutes if there are any questions that I can answer right now.
I have a question. You said that in the HLC progression documents that the models are going to be added in about April and published.
That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, thank you.
I would say definitely that's sort of a by the end of this school year project. We have drafts for pre-K through 4th grade. We're actually going through a revision process. So I would say definitely by the end of the school year, with the hope that it would be a bit sooner than that.
Quick question. On all the assessments, do you require students to show models to show their thinking?
So a lot of some of the tasks specifically express that, but not all of them do. So in some cases, you might need more information from a student. So if you have used the work sort protocol, there's always a pile of student work that you can't quite place as far as their strategy use, because you don't have enough information from the evidence they've put on the paper. So I think of, if a student falls into that category, then asking that follow-up of like, what did you do? How did you figure this out? Or could you show me that, to really see and uncover what model they used, if they didn't, either if it wasn't explicitly asked, or even if it was asked and they just didn't have a way to capture that and put it down on paper. All right, well, thank you all. Have a great evening.